The Politics program is brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That's where you can support the show. If you are a backer at $3 a week, then you get 3 podcasts a week. Yeah, this free one, it's always going to be free. But the Monday show, the Friday show, little updates to make sure that you got all these hot takes when news breaks. Didn't mean for that to rhyme, but yet it did. And it can be your lyrical connection to the political world if you go to TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Also, I got a brand new game out. A lot of y'all I know are fans of The Contender, the game of presidential debate. Well, now shipping is my new game, Action News, the game of television news. Think of Contender, but take it to the next level. You and your friends and family can reenact the craziest, most insane local news broadcast of all time using real stories. Head on over there right now, actionnewsgame.com. Enough of talking about how we support the show. What do you say we just do the damn thing?
Politics, 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 politics. Yes. Come on, come on, come on.
All right, folks. Welcome. Politics coming right at you. On August 8th, 2018, a lot to talk about. The last special elections of 2018 happened last night. We got all the scorekeeping to do there. Was it good news or bad news for Blue Team? Does it make the wave more or less likely? We will discuss. Alex Jones had the bomb dropped him. The bomb dropped on him yesterday, or Monday rather. We're going to talk about all that, and we're going to talk about old Ted Cruz. Does Ted Cruz hear those Beto footsteps so loud that he needs to call on an old nemesis to save his thick-cut Texas bacon? Well, we're going to find out. Tell you what, big shout out to everybody watching us live, twitch.tv/Justin R. Young. Mr. Plunge writes here on in our chat, I guess a new viewer. Welcome, all are welcome here. What leaning does this channel have? Well, I would challenge anybody who does watch us live or listens to this show, do me a favor. You tell me, by the end of this broadcast, you tell me, because I'm going to be very honest. I'm going to do my best. But I'm curious. I'm curious what y'all think my leaning is by the end of all this. T2 probably nails it with chaotic neutral. But let's go ahead and start things off. Big things happening last night. The last special elections of 2018. The 2 biggest races in my timeline was, of course, Ohio 12. And, oddly enough, the Michigan gubernatorial race, which is where we're going to start, because Mohammed Al-Sayed was the progressive challenger. And so now I'm seeing a lot of headlines about how there was well, here, let's just go ahead and read right here from the Washington Post. The Democratic Party's liberal insurgency hits a Midwest wall. This is a David Weigel piece here. The Democratic Party's left-wing insurgency found its limits Tuesday night, with voters favoring establishment candidates over more liberal challengers in almost every closely watched race across every state. In Michigan, former state Senator Gretchen Whitmer easily won the Democratic nomination for governor over, did I say Muhammad? I apologize. Abdul al-Sayed, a doctor backed by Senator Bernie Sanders, who is vying to become the country's first Muslim governor. Unwritten here that I saw a lot as well was that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was, of course, the Star is Born a few weeks ago, as she completed a crazy upset for a congressional seat, a likely congressional seat. She now hit the trail over the last few weeks and went and tried to lend her star power to more and more progressive candidates like her. She is cut from the Bernie Sanders cloth. Young, exciting. She is proof, according to her, that there is a new math afoot. We're not talking about whether or not you can convince independents to become liberal voters. You're not talking about whether or not you can convert third-way Democrats or establishment Democrats to support a more left-leaning option. Her swing voters, this is according to Ocasio-Cortez, are non-voters, people who have been left out of the political process. This is again, the new math. Normally you say, okay, who has voted? How can we get them to vote our way? Or how can we suppress them if they're never going to vote our way? That's normally how politics works. And she seemed to prove, at least in her race, that there is room for a shaking up of this outmoded, as some might say, way of thinking. So I do find it to be a bit of a disingenuous kind of narrative when the radical idea that has been proven right once doesn't immediately apply itself wholesale throughout a bunch of disconnected races that are only really strung together because the media wants to string together the fact that is Ocasio-Cortez, is Bernie Sanders a transcendent magic amulet that can change the fortunes of whomever decides to rub it the right way and say the incantation correctly? Like, that seems a little ridiculous. Nobody paid attention to these races until that lady became famous and then went out on the road. And I'm sure that you could probably put together at least a credible solution that Abdul al-Sayed probably did better than he would have done otherwise. And therefore, the story should really be that, hey, there is more excitement for these kinds of candidates than there would be otherwise. But instead, we get this headline. Democratic Party's liberal insurgency hits a wall in Midwest primaries. I mean, it's not untrue, but I do want to have everybody hold on to that for 2 seconds. Because what we've seen right here is a very winners and losers kind of narrative, right? Either you, if you ain't first, you're last. So either this is going to work or it ain't going to work. All right, keep that in mind. Because the other big story was Ohio 12 last night. That is a deep red district that, it turned out to be extraordinarily competitive. Only 2,000 votes separating the Republican and the Democrat. So here, and granted, this is the initial story was a Washington Post news story. This is a Chris Cillizza analysis piece. But I feel like this is representative about some of the narratives that I have seen. Here's the Chris Cillizza piece about Ohio 12. Here's the real lesson. Here's the real lesson of the Ohio special election. And the real lesson is that this is very good news for the Democrats because they are closer than they should be in these special elections. Now, for the record, I agree with this. If we are going to look at the numbers in all the special elections that have happened, now that they are all in the books, looking forward, of course, toward November 6th, where, by the way, you can recap this entire midterm season and watch the results come in with me at Piano Fight in San Francisco, 7 o'clock. We will have ticket information on that now, but if you search Eventbrite for Wave Watch Extravaganza, you can probably find it now. But let's get back to Ohio. Either you want to buy in to the winners and losers narrative or you want to buy into the numbers narrative. Now, I don't think that they're mutually exclusive, but when we talk about media storytelling, when we talk about media narratives, this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. This is what I mean. So let's go into what Cillizza has to say. Politics is about wins and losses, and by that measure, the Republicans appear to have had a good night on Tuesday, with State Senator Troy Balderson leading Franklin County Recorder Danny O'Connor by just under 2,000 votes. But keeping score in special elections by simply tallying up wins and losses can miss the point, and this is one of those moments. Look, this is the song remains the same. The Democrat was closer than they should have been. And so, yes, this is a Republican win, but wait until November. Wait until November, because then the chickens will come home to roost. Now, if I were to pour any kind of cold water on that narrative specifically, here's what I would say. Yes, the Democrats are going to have a natural advantage. This is what happens. This is the tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme when it comes to one party having control of all three parts of government. Or sorry, all the House, Senate, and executive branch, the White House. It's not all three parts, not the Supreme Court, but y'all know what I'm saying. The wolves come for you when you have control of all three. There's going to be Democratic enthusiasm. But what happens if we all know it's coming? The blue wave is coming. The question now is how much it wipes away. So what happens when the moral victory isn't, boy, did those Democrats come closer in those red counties. Boy, did those Democrats come closer in those red counties. Boy, did those Democrats come closer in those statewide races. And it's, boy, did those Democrats come close to taking back the House. But they didn't. What happens when that's the story? Because we are all assuming that this is priming the pump for a gigantic, well, I mean, you guys know what we're on the lookout for. Wave Watch! What happens when indeed we see
That's just the wave.
But it's not enough. Because right now, those are the stories we are seeing right now. We keep thinking that eventually they will be larger. And yet, we haven't quite seen the results in the special election. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we won't see it on November. All these races are going to mean a different thing going forward. But just do yourself a favor. When you're reading these stories, note when they're giving the benefit of the doubt to certain things and when they're not. Because if I were like an Ocasio-Cortez fan, I'd be like, that Weigel headline's bullshit. That's a bullshit headline. Why don't you say Al Sayed did better than he would have otherwise. The way you're saying with all these Democratic candidates, these more mainstream Democratic candidates that, oh, look, well, they did, sure, they lost, right? But, like, the trend is in this direction. Where's that trend story? Just because the socialist, the progressive left candidate doesn't take over? Well, where's the nuance now, motherfucker? This will be a good time to remind everybody that I got a free political newsletter. Go to freepoliticalnewsletter.com. Comes 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. 5 stories. Some hot takes. Mostly gifts. Usually at the Chappelle Show. Just that easy. Head on over there. freepoliticalnewsletter.com. All right. Y'all want to talk about Alex Jones? We can talk about Alex Jones. Alex Jones got taken off. Well, let's see. Let's see if we can recount how this went. Dominoes fell really fast on this one. Alex Jones was delisted from Apple Podcasts. This, according to reporting, came after a discussion between Apple CEO Tim Cook and Eddie Q. He was then taken off of Facebook. He was then taken off of Spotify. He was then taken off of YouTube. This has then led for other folks to take him down, including Pinterest and MailChimp. So, here's something that I don't want to get into. How odious Alex Jones is. I find him to be a interesting, fascinating, kind of gross figure. Brostress in our chat says InfoWars was on Pinterest. Apparently Alex Jones was also surprised. As he was running down everybody that's canceled their accounts, he apparently offered a very hearty, well, you know, I didn't even know we were on Pinterest. I mean, maybe it turns out I was just trying to spread the word to all good, free-thinking Christian patriots by way of a very good lemon cake recipe. But let's investigate. Let's assume, right, that let's draw a circle around Alex Jones and say he is indeed a odious figure. Let's say he is somebody for whom has peddled in conspiracy theories, as I feel that is something that is without a doubt, and you can make an argument on whether or not he is just parroting conspiracy theories and trying to get to the bottom of them, or whether or not he is fanning the flames on them to the point where it's become dangerous. Let's just assume everything wrong, everything that, you know, all the problems with him is, they are all true. Is this a good or a bad thing that they've taken him off those platforms? Because they are private companies, as everybody's wont to say. I don't want to get into the shit about, like, it's a First Amendment thing. It's not a First Amendment thing. That's fine. We know that. There is a conversation to be had about what we as users to these platforms, what we want with them. That, I think, is true. This isn't a government thing. This is a users talking to platforms thing. So let's stop thinking about what they can do. Of course, Apple, YouTube, Facebook, they can kick off whoever they want. Let's talk about what we want as users of these. All right? Let's take an active role. Because I think it's very clear that these platforms are listening to its users. Now, whether or not it's listening to all of them, whether or not it's listening to them responsibly is a different story. But Alex Jones is not on these platforms because users of these platforms think he's an odious cunt. So there's that side of it. All right? So I think it's reductive for us to just entrench ourselves in the, okay, well, they're allowed, they're McDonald's. If you're doing something wrong at the McDonald's, they can kick you out of the McDonald's. And let's think about, hey, on these platforms, do we have a place where we think somebody shouting conspiracy theories can live? If the answer is no, then the answer is no. But let's at least be active in a world in which the platforms are actively responding to us. Because I believe that's what they are doing. This isn't Tim Cook and Eddie Q saying top down, we got to get him off. Now, before I get into whether or not this makes Alex Jones more or less powerful, let me get to a element of what I believe to be cowardice. I believe it is cowardly for all of these platforms to dump him at once. Because you want to know why? I think that nobody wanted to go alone. Nobody. And as soon as Tim Cook made the first move, and they realized that this wouldn't just be a party of one, they didn't have to eat alone. Oh, everybody got on that group text. You mind if I come with? Because they knew they had to do it. They knew they had to do it. But they knew that somebody was going to have to go.
The poop buffet. Who's first in line today for the poop buffet?
Yeah. The only reason why everybody did this all at the exact same time was because Apple did it first. And I think that that's cowardly. I think that if you're going to kick somebody off your platform, you need to be able to show the work on why they needed to be kicked off on your time. It just, to me, it undercuts the idea that you are going to be the free and fair arbiter. And it basically just says, hey, we're going to just do what the mob says. And to me, even if we agree with doing what the mob says, I think it's just a bad precedent. I think it's just a bad idea. It's bad form, Peter. Now let's get to this other side. Did all of this make Alex Jones more or less powerful? There's a fairly good argument to say that everything has just made him more powerful than he has ever been. Consider the fact that Alex Jones has been saying that, well, you know, the communist, globalist agenda powered an axis of sociopaths, Hollow Dot sociopaths, George Soros, the communists, the Bilderberg Conference. This is all documented on Infowars.com. And their cronies in the mainstream media, these legacy media operations that are crumbling. Second by second, they're being propped up by the money that is being funded and harvested from the babies' bodies. Free-thinking Christians and patriots are just being taken out at all times. They have demonized me, and now they have taken me out. I've been warning about this for over 14,000 years. I'm an infinite spirit. Yes, I am known by many names. Alex Jones is only my mortal form. I have been bringing the truth to civilization since the dawning of time. I'm an infinite sprite. Please look into my eyes and you will see true freedom. Like, if that's his idea, if his whole thing is they're trying to censor me, there is a war for your mind, you are living on the prison planet, it's an info war, and they silence him and effectively rubber stamp him as the man that they don't want you to hear, well, then you have what's happening right now. Apple and Google have not banned the InfoWars apps, and now I believe InfoWars, at least at the time that we are recording, is the #1 news app on the Google Play Store. And all the platforms for which he has remained on, chiefly Twitter and Periscope, he has boomed. The heat is on him more than it ever has been. And by the way, it's a fairly strategically placed thing because now he has made the point that this is all for the midterms. And so now we have a nice little 2-month run-up. So the heat that he has now is not going to dissipate. It's going to continue to build because we have a big crescendo coming up. So now the question is, like, how far do we go? This is where the troubling element is. I don't like look at this from the platform's perspective. I don't think that this is a troubling situation because, there is, whatever, the free speech, yada, 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 where we're going to tolerate stuff. Put that in a stowaway box for a second. Right now, so he got kicked out of the vast majority of his reach. He had his reach vastly curtailed on Monday. But he's still on Twitter. And these apps that he has, the InfoWars apps, are booming on Apple and Google. So now the question is, okay, do you kick him off Twitter? So this has been the big thing yesterday and today. Jack Dorsey of Twitter having to explain why he has not kicked off Alex Jones. All right. So that's Jack on Twitter. And now I'm sure Tim Cook and Google's Play Store. I don't know who directly would be the figurehead there. But now they're going to have to answer for why he's still there. Okay? So let's say they kick him off. How far do we go? How far is Facebook going to go right now if there's a fan site set up that just repurposes Alex Jones content? What about a podcast that isn't run by InfoWars, but literally just rebroadcasts InfoWars? Are you going to pull all of those too? What about apps that aren't just for InfoWars, but are tacitly understood and agreed upon that this is the place that rebroadcasts InfoWars? Like, where does it end? Are you literally committing to playing whack-a-mole with every time Alex Jones pops his head out? Globalists. Whack. Bilderberg Conference. Whack. Like, you can't do that. And every time that you're going to chase him around, you're going to give him something else to yell about, and you're going to look more like the baddies. Where in history are the good guys the ones who keep censoring speech? My question is, are these lifetime bans? Because if you don't have a clear-cut set, and I'm not talking about what people are doing by themselves, I'm saying Facebook's got to come out and say these were the reasons why he was kicked off. There was actually a very interesting media analysis about this, basically saying that, hey, look, Alex Jones should be the line in the sand for these companies should be libel and slander. If you're convicted for libel and slander, then you as a platform can say, hey, we don't want to be held responsible for this. We don't want to be involved in these lawsuits. We are technically your publisher. You're gone. Hate speech is hard to police. Not to say that you can't, not even to say that you shouldn't. It's hard to police. So where do we go from here? That's my question. And it's the question that all these platforms should be asking themselves. Here's some questions that Ted Cruz should be asking himself. Who am I? Who is Ted Cruz? I think he looks himself in the eyes and says, what's my life? What's the point here? You know, Ted Cruz is now suggesting that he is going to bring out the big guns in his Texas Senate campaign race against Beto O'Rourke, who was only running about 6 points behind him. And the big guns mean Donald Trump. Yes, President of the United States. Yes, Ted Cruz's a primary opponent back in 2016. Yes, the same guy who tacitly accused Rafael Cruz of possibly being part of the murder of John F. Kennedy. Now, there's a reason why he's doing it. Donald Trump has not proven himself to be toxic in the midterms. I think something that the Democrats were very much hoping for, that his low approval ratings would translate to some candidates kind of shooing him off a little bit. And Ted Cruz is somebody that would very much have his base excited by Donald Trump, despite the fact that Ted Cruz did win the Texas primary over Donald Trump. But man, it got me thinking. Wouldn't it be funny? Wouldn't it just be a barrel of laughs if Donald Trump got up in front of that little crowd there, whoever he speaks to in Texas, and had this to say?
If you love our country and love your children as much as I know that you do, stand and speak and vote your conscience. Vote for candidates up and down the ticket who you trust to defend our freedom and to be faithful to the Constitution.
For those of you who don't remember, that is Ted Cruz at the Republican National Convention, very pointedly not endorsing Donald Trump. The reason why you heard boos mixed in there is because Ted Cruz got up on stage at the Donald Trump party and specifically did not say that he was going to vote for Donald Trump. This was right a day after he told the Texas delegates that he was not in the habit of voting for somebody who repeatedly attacked his family. And so he got up and tried to split the baby. That was not the case. He got booed. One of his main money men, Sheldon Adelson, took a picture with Donald Trump right afterward. God, that was a great convention. I can't wait for the next conventions, man. Oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I don't even know who. I might just go by myself. If I don't get any kind of media gig, man, I'm just gonna apply by myself. That shit was so lit. It was fucking awesome. It was great. Everybody's so angry, jumping up and down, yelling, screaming. Oh, jeez. It is interesting that the Beto thing is close. As many people in my Twitter mentions have joked about. Number one, apparently Beto has, if you are in Texas, Beto is all up in your fucking Twitter. Or sorry, all up in your Twitter and all up in your text messages. I have had many friends in Texas talk about how much they're like, look, dude, you got my support. You don't need to hit me up every 5 seconds. Calm it down. I'm going to vote for you. I had one friend who was suffering a family tragedy who Beto, the Beto machine, texted him. And he's like, hey, I'm suffering a family tragedy. And then, like, sent a picture of a hard to look at element of that family tragedy. And at least the Beto person was like, oh, my God, I'm sorry. Oh, Austin's own Trey Warren says he hasn't gotten any Beto texts yet. Well, I'll tell you what, they're coming. They'll get everybody eventually. We'll see what those debates do, but the closer that Beto gets to Cruz, the more interesting it's going to be. Because Cruz is an interesting candidate. I don't know how well he does when he's really pressed. I don't think he did particularly well against Trump when he was pressed. And this will be a very intense spotlight because the question will be, does Ted Cruz shit the bed in epic proportions? It won't just be Ted Cruz lost a race. It'll be Ted Cruz pooped himself in a major way. All right, one last big story here. We got some Wave Watch. Wait, hold on. Let's get our sounder here. Wave Watch. Out here in a district we did not expect. News coming in today. New York Republican Chris Collins indicted on insider trading charges. This coming from CNN. Federal prosecutors in New York on Wednesday charged New York Republican Chris Collins and his son and another man with 13 counts of security fraud, wire fraud, and false statements stemming from an alleged insider trading scheme centered on an Australian pharmaceutical company. Collins, who was the first sitting member of Congress to endorse Donald Trump's presidential bid, surrendered Wednesday at his attorney's office in Manhattan, according to the FBI. Prosecutors at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York allege in the indictment that Collins and other defendants used non-public information and the results of a drug trial to trade on a stock on the pharmaceutical company Innate Immunotherapeutics Limited, of which Collins was a board member. That allowed them to avoid more than $768,000 in losses that they would have incurred if they had traded the stock after the drug trial results became public. This is an issue because, number one, he's going to be removed from some of the committees, and also because he is up for election. So there is a question on whether or not his very deep red district in the House could be something that becomes competitive. Strike It Rich does point out here that it's not illegal for members of Congress to benefit from insider trading, which is hilarious. The problem was he gave that information to his son and his friends, and that's why they are all indicted. So yet another addition to the rich mosaic known as the Wave Watch. But you want to know what? What do you say? What do you say? We take a look at some of the numbers here. Speaking of 2016. 2018 rather. What do you say we go ahead and yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the just one specific race. What do you say we actually head on down to Arizona? Yeah, Arizona. And we go ahead and take a look at polls the only way that we really know how. Big shout out to the patron saint, Cardi B, as we take a look at the Arizona Senate race to replace Jeff Flake. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we are here for the politics.
Get on the floor if you got that booty.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, this is an ABC 15 OH Predictive Insights poll taken from July 23rd to July 25th. It has a sample size of 600 likely voters and a margin of error of 4. Again, both are challengers, as Jeff Flake has vacated his seat. So let's go ahead and welcome first to the stage. She is a representative of Flake's Republican Party. Get a big round of applause with 44% of the vote.
If you got that booty.
But your headliner, she would flip a Senate seat from red to blue if on election night this Democrat took it home with 48% of the vote. Let's give a big round of applause for Chris. That is 48% of the vote. Cinema over McSally with a 4. All right. Spread. You know, those are the kind of races that, like, if we want to talk about the unthinkable happening, the biggest possible version of the blue team totally having the Republican stranglehold of Congress,
and quietly get swallowed by a wave.
Well, it wouldn't be quietly, Colin. It would almost more certainly.
It gets swallowed by a wave.
And we're talking about the Senate and the House. Very hard to do. Very unlikely. Well, it's stuff like Flake Seats going. Flake Seats kind of has to go for that to happen. Beto's kind of got to pull those upsets. Otherwise, it just ain't going to happen. What do you say we go ahead and get into but your emails? Go ahead and write into theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Again, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Had a bunch of really great ones this week. Thank you guys for writing in. Mark Flanagan wrote in and said, hey, please don't sleep on the Kemp versus Abrams race in Georgia. Homie, I don't know how long you've been listening to this show, but we are all over Kemp and Abrams. In fact, that will probably be what we talk about the most when I am live with the Politics at DragonCon this Labor Day. So make sure you go ahead and get your tickets on Saturday for the live Politics from DragonCon in Atlanta, Georgia. A-Town down. But Mark also went on to write, wanted to know your thoughts on Avenatti's recent flirtations with running for president. I'll be honest, as a liberal-leaning citizen, it is cathartic to have somebody lob effective rhetorical bombs at the president in a way that nobody else has done to date. However, I would hate to think that the only way to win the presidency is to use Trump's tactics against him. Seems like a never-ending spiral to rock-bottom stupid. You would consider me a card-carrying member of the Never Avenatti Club. Well, I do believe that the biggest lesson that we will learn from Donald Trump's ascendancy to the presidency is that we need to relook at how campaigns are run in a post-social media era. I think part of that lesson is you do need less money. That enthusiasm, genuine enthusiasm, is more important than numerically calculated enthusiasm. I think part of that is effective shit talking, but I don't think all of it is. But I've also called that Avenatti was going to run for president from the second he made himself the most important figure in the Stormy Daniels thing. We got a lot of emails about how our liberal listeners would feel about Coke money, that dirty-ass Coke money. Coke money, baby. But in all seriousness, the Koch brothers funding Democratic candidates. Brian wrote in, as a fairly moderate liberal, I'd feel dirty AF if Dems took money with if Dems won the House with the help of Coke money. AC wrote in, Frozen Cusser wrote in, independent. I'm an independent that caucuses with the Democrats. Coke money is the same as all money. It has to be in bright daylight. Bernie or any politician complaining about specific people generally bothers me. I'm okay with complaints about specific actions, but complaining about people is a no-go. That being said, if the Koch brothers started supporting candidates that back their socially libertarian views, but not their fiscally libertarian views, I'd be okay with that. So far, they've only done the opposite. I quibble a little bit with only. I think that that's kind of how the narrative about them has been spun. But I think that they put more money into socially liberal causes than I think the media gives them credit for. Sean writes, as much as I viewed the Koch brothers as a boogeyman, it was through the lens of political norms. It feels like a 4:3 television, a 4:3 aspect ratio television, so like the square, is now an 18:9 aspect ratio these days. Their campaign for prison reform first got me questioning exactly how terrible they are. I think that there is some common ground that they could have with an acceptable left-leaning candidate. I wouldn't be opposed to their money helping with the wave if that's what they were interested in it lined up with what the voters wanted. If a Democrat could take over Ryan's vacated seat because Harley moved production to keep its shareholders happy, then it would be acceptable to me. Also, if the Kochs wanted to give money to Dems, bring it on. It isn't like the billionaire left-leaning class is opening their wallets. It's long past time for the Dems to play the same game as the GOP, and the Kochs can help us get there. I don't know exactly how much the Democrats haven't been playing the same game, but who knows? Eric writes, Back in June of 2017, Charles Koch made the statement on the Freakonomics podcast that he'd support Democrats with the right policies. It's a good interview that caused a lot of backlash from listeners, as to say his name is to give him power, Harry Potter-esque. Great show, keep it up. Thank you, Eric. David wrote, so now that Trump is president, could Biden remind us how nice it was to have a president who is, quote, articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy, essentially recasting his prior comment in a non-racist way? David, you have just kind of foreseen the future, I believe. Because that's the exact kind of shit that Biden would do and have everybody remember, oh, yeah, maybe he's racist. Biden's going to eat his own butt if he runs. There's no doubt about that. He will eat his own butt. He will fuck up on the campaign trail. It's kind of the one constant of all Biden. All right. We got a couple different emails. This is probably the one that puts it together the most, about my comparison between the current rise of social progressive left and the rise of the Tea Party back in 2008 and 9. So here we go. This is Michael writing in. Thanks for reading my email on the PX3 show. I disagree with you about equating the progressive left with the Tea Party. Here's my matter of opinion. Somehow progressivism and socialism have gotten tainted in American politics, mostly by corporate capitalists using nationalistic propaganda. They tainted the liberal left along with the communists as not being patriots. They banished the German culture, too, from America in the name of World War I patriotism. Eugene Debs was imprisoned simply because of opposing the war. He was just exercising his right of civil disobedience and being a conscientious objector. The socialists got nearly 1 million votes in 1912 before the World War I fervor crushed them. Now, back to the Tea Party. It is basically a libertarian movement in reaction to Obama. It was encouraged by corporate capitalist politicians who feared the liberalism of Obama. Progressivism is the opposite of the Tea Party in that it supports the liberal values of social justice and economic justice. The recent progressive movement has been motivated in reaction to the raw, capitalistic corporate policies of the Trump administration. I believe the Democratic Party should be liberal and progressive. In my opinion, the present DNC is too moderate and too dependent on corporate funding. Citizens United has ruined American politics. Hubert Humphrey introduced the civil rights plank in the 1948 DNC convention. There were many Democrats who were not happy about it, including Truman, who was a Missouri Democrat. They started the Southern Democratic exodus to the GOP, culminating in Nixon's sweep of the South in 1972. In the 68 election, Humphrey shifted too much to the middle and was too loyal to LBJ. He almost pulled it out when he finally shifted more to the left and came out against Vietnam. But he did it too late and lost narrowly to Nixon in the 68 election. If he had been more liberal, he would have won. And then Michael attached a bunch of planks of various platforms of parties that I don't want to go into. Few things, a few points. My point last week about how much the progressive left reminds me of the Tea Party was not philosophically, although I'm going to quibble with you to make my point, Michael. When you say, I'm going to use your words in verbatim, the Tea Party, here we go. The Tea Party was a reaction, a libertarian movement in reaction to Obama. And it was encouraged by corporate capitalist politicians who feared the liberalism of Obama. I would make the argument that from my perspective, watching it grow, the initial wave of the Tea Party was just as much about a frustration that the Republican Party had become feckless and had lost its way. In fact, it was too much in the pockets of big money donors who were pushing things and making compromises that they were not comfortable with. Wait a minute. It kind of sounds like what you said here. I believe the Democratic Party should be liberal and progressive, and in my opinion, the present DNC is too moderate and too dependent on corporate funding. I mean, kind of sounds like there is, at least from my perspective, these are the kinds of things I heard from the Tea Party. This is what I'm saying. Put the same due diligence that you have done with Hubert Humphrey and the progressivism and socialism in America dating back to 1910. Do the same due diligence with the Tea Party. It's all I'm asking. Because I think to say that they were a corporate crony, astroturfed, overreaction, a racist reaction to Obama's liberalism is not doing yourself any service. Because there's a lot that you can learn by the rise and fall of the Tea Party. Mechanically. Not philosophically, mechanically. At least that's just, one man's opinion.
Politics.
Folks, that about wraps it up. I want to remind everybody that you can go ahead and email me, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Support this show by going on over to takepoliticsseriously.com. I want to thank Valesco and Trop Killers for providing this music. You can follow me at Justin R. Young everywhere. Of course, you can download archived episodes of this show at bonerwars.com. That about wraps it up for us. freepoliticalnewsletter.com. Get me in your inbox 5 days a week. Also, make sure that you'll get my new game, actionnewsgame.com. Remember, folks, some shows talk about politics. Others talk about politics. Still more talk about politics. This is the only show that talks about motherfucking hooray! I will see you guys next week.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.